The sound of skin meeting skin echoed through the marble courthouse hallway like a gunshot, followed by a silence so complete that even the traffic outside seemed to hold its breath. In that frozen moment, Claire Whitman realized she had just destroyed her life with a single unthinkable act. Welcome back, beautiful souls. Today's story starts with one devastating slap that changes everything. When privilege collides with justice in a federal courthouse, the consequences will leave you breathless. Hit subscribe and tell me in the comments where you're watching from, because tomorrow I've got another incredible story waiting for you. Ready to see what happens when someone's worst moment becomes their defining choice? Let's begin. Claire Whitman adjusted her Hermes scarf for the third time, her manicured fingers betraying the anxiety she refused to acknowledge. The courthouse steps stretched before her like a mountain she'd never imagined having to climb. At 42, she had spent her entire life insulated by wealth, privilege, and the unshakable belief that rules were for other people. Mrs. Whitman? Her lawyer Patterson touched her elbow gently. We should go in. The hearing starts in 10 minutes. She nodded curtly, her jaw set in the same stubborn line that had gotten her into this mess. The embezzlement charges were supposed to be a formality, a misunderstanding that money and connections would quietly resolve. After all, the missing funds from the children's charity had been an accounting error. Everyone made mistakes. The marble floors of the courthouse clicked beneath her Louboutin heels as she walked through the metal detectors, barely acknowledging the security guards who recognized her from the society pages. Other people waited on wooden benches, people who looked tired, worried, defeated, not her kind of people. Meanwhile, 3 floors up, Dr. Nia Thornton Williams gathered the last of her patient files, her movements precise despite the exhaustion that had settled into her bones. As the head of psychiatric services at City General, she was used to long days, but today felt different, heavier. Nia, you don't have to come. Her husband had said that morning over coffee, his dark eyes filled with concern. About watching justice happen? She'd smiled then, but it hadn't reached her eyes. Marcus, I've spent 15 years listening to broken people tell me their stories. I need to see what justice looks like when it actually works. Now, walking toward the elevator that would take her to Courtroom 3B, Nia felt the familiar weight of being one of the few black faces in this gleaming temple of law. Even after all these years as Judge Marcus Williams' wife, she still felt the stares, still heard the whispered assumptions about how she'd married up. Her phone buzzed with a text from her husband, almost done with the Morrison case. See you in 20 minutes? I love you. She smiled. A real one this time. 23 years of marriage, and he still sent her love notes. The elevator doors opened to reveal a cluster of reporters already positioned outside Courtroom 3B. The Whitman case had attracted attention. A wealthy socialite embezzling from a children's cancer charity made for good headlines. Dr. Thornton Williams. A reporter thrust a microphone toward her. Any comment on today's sentencing? Do you think your husband will? No comment, Nia said firmly, pushing past them toward the courtroom doors. Back on the ground floor, Claire emerged from the bathroom, having spent 10 minutes reapplying lipstick and practicing her contrite expression in the mirror. The reflection looking back at her showed a woman who had never faced real consequences, never had to answer for anything more serious than a speeding ticket. Claire. The voice belonged to Margot Astor, her oldest friend and bridge partner. I came as soon as I heard. This is absolutely ridiculous. Everyone knows you'd never actually steal money. Of course I wouldn't, Claire replied, grateful for the familiar voice of support. It's just a misunderstanding. These people, she gestured vaguely at the courthouse around them. They don't understand how real charity work operates. Margot nodded sympathetically. And having to appear before that judge, I mean, really, what does he know about our kind of people? Claire's expression hardened. She'd heard about Judge Williams, a man who'd supposedly worked his way up from nothing, the kind of diversity hire who probably resented successful people like her. And his wife, Claire, had seen her picture in the paper, one of those professional black women who thought they were better than everyone else. Mrs. Whitman, Patterson, appeared at her elbow again. "It's time." As they walked toward the elevator, Claire caught sight of an elegant black woman in a navy blue dress disappearing into courtroom 3B. Something about her regal bearing, her obvious confidence, made Claire's lip curl with irritation. People like that always made her uncomfortable. They acted like they belonged everywhere, like they had earned their place instead of having it handed to them through affirmative action or marriage. The elevator doors closed, carrying Claire toward a confrontation that would shatter everything she thought she knew about herself, about justice, and about the unexpected places where redemption could bloom. What do you think drives people like Claire to feel so entitled? Have you ever witnessed someone's prejudices completely backfire on them? Share your thoughts in the comments below. The courtroom felt smaller than Claire had expected, its wood-paneled walls closing in like the sides of a box. She sat rigidly in the defendant's chair, her spine straight, chin raised in defiance even as Patterson whispered last-minute instructions in her ear. "Remember, show remorse but not guilt. Contrition, not confession," he murmured. Judge Marcus Williams entered through the side door, his black robes flowing behind him like wings. Claire studied his face, younger than she'd expected, maybe mid-40s, with intelligent eyes that seemed to take in everything. The kind of man who probably thought he was smarter than everyone else in the room. "All rise for the Honorable Judge Williams," the bailiff announced. As Claire stood, she noticed the woman in the navy dress from earlier now sitting in the front row of the gallery. The woman's posture was perfect, her hands folded calmly in her lap, but there was something in her eyes, a kind of weary strength that made Claire's teeth clench. His wife Claire realized with a spike of irritation. Of course she's here. Probably wants to watch her husband put a white woman in her place. Judge Williams settled into his chair and opened the file before him. "Be seated. We're here today for the sentencing of Claire Elizabeth Whitman, who has pleaded guilty to embezzlement of charitable funds in the amount of $247,000. The words hit Claire like ice water. Guilty. She hadn't pleaded guilty. She'd made a deal. There was a difference, wasn't there? "Mrs. Whitman," Judge Williams continued, his voice steady and professional, "before I pronounce sentence, do you have anything to say to this court?" Claire rose slowly, her prepared speech dissolving on her tongue as she looked at the judge's impassive face. This wasn't how it was supposed to go. She was supposed to get community service, maybe probation. She was Claire Whitman. She had donated millions to charity over the years. She had connections, influence, a reputation to protect. "Your Honor," she began, her voice pitched higher than usual, "I want to say that this has all been a terrible misunderstanding. The money was only borrowed, temporarily redirected to cover some cash flow issues with my other charitable work. I've already paid it back, with interest." Judge Williams watched her without expression, making notes on the papers before him. Claire's voice grew stronger, more confident. "I think it's important to consider the context here, Your Honor. I've given more money to charity than most people see in a lifetime. I've served on dozens of boards, organized countless fundraisers. This mistake doesn't erase a lifetime of service to my community." She paused, waiting for some sign of understanding, some indication that he recognized who she was, what she represented. Instead, she saw something that looked almost like pity in his eyes. "Furthermore," Claire continued, her composure cracking slightly, "I have to question whether I'm receiving fair treatment here. If this were anyone else, someone who looked like me, someone from my background, would we even be having this conversation?" A murmur ran through the courtroom. In the front row, Nia shifted slightly, her jaw tightening almost imperceptibly. Judge Williams set down his pen and looked directly at Claire. "Mrs. Whitman, you stole $247,000 from children with cancer. Children who needed that money for treatment, for hope, for life itself. The court is not interested in your social status, your connections, or your previous charitable work. We are here to address the harm you caused to the most vulnerable members of our society." Claire felt heat rise in her cheeks. "I didn't steal anything," she said, her voice sharpening. "And I resent the implication that I would take money from sick children. This is exactly the kind of bias I'm talking about." "Bias?" Judge Williams's voice remained level, but something dangerous flickered in his eyes. "Yes, bias," Claire said, her voice rising. "I think it's pretty clear that certain people in this courtroom have already made up their minds about me based on assumptions." The courtroom fell silent. Even the court reporter's fingers paused over her keys. Judge Williams stood slowly. "Mrs. Whitman, I'm going to give you one opportunity to reconsider what you're about to say." But Claire was past the point of caution, past the ability to read the room or recognize the cliff she was approaching. 23 years of marriage had taught her to trust Marcus's instincts about people. But looking at Claire Whitman now, all Nia could see was every privileged person who had ever questioned her credentials, her intelligence, her right to be in any room she entered. "No, I think I've been very clear," Claire continued, her voice carrying across the now silent courtroom. "Some people here seem more interested in making examples than in dispensing actual justice." Judge Williams' voice cut through the air like a blade. "Counselor, please advise your client." "Don't lecture me about justice," Claire snapped, completely unhinged now. "Not when it's obvious that certain people in this courtroom are more interested in payback than fairness." Nia stood up slowly, her movement drawing every eye in the room. She walked to the barrier, separating the gallery from the well of the court, her heels clicking steadily on the polished floor. "Excuse me," Nia said, her voice calm, but carrying clearly, "but I think you should know that those children you stole from, I treat them. I'm the one who has to tell their parents when the funding for their therapy runs out because people like you think charity money is your personal piggy bank." Claire whirled around to face her, all pretense of courtroom decorum evaporating. "People like me? People like me? I don't think you understand who you're talking to." "I understand perfectly," Nia replied, her voice still steady. "I'm talking to a thief who's trying to blame everyone else for her choices." The slap echoed through the courtroom like thunder. For a moment that stretched into eternity, nobody moved. Claire's hand was still raised, her palm stinging from the contact with Nia's cheek. Nia stood perfectly still, her head turned slightly from the force of the blow, her eyes wide with shock. Then the bailiff was moving, the gallery erupting in gasps and shouts, and Judge Williams' voice boomed over it all. "Bailiff, arrest Mrs. Whitman immediately." Claire looked around the courtroom, at the shocked faces, at the bailiff approaching with handcuffs, at Nia touching her reddening cheek with trembling fingers, and finally understood the magnitude of what she had just done. "Wait," she whispered, then louder. "Wait, I didn't mean I'm sorry." But the bailiff was already behind her, and the cold metal of handcuffs was closing around her wrists, and Judge Williams was saying words like contempt of court and assault and additional charges, and Claire realized that in one moment of blind rage, she had crossed a line from which there might be no return. The holding cell smelled like disinfectant and despair. Claire sat on the narrow metal bench, her designer suit wrinkled, her perfectly styled hair beginning to escape its pins. The handcuffs had been removed, but red marks still circled her wrists like accusations. "This is insane," she muttered to herself for the dozenth time, pacing the small space. "Completely insane. I barely touched her." Through the reinforced glass window, she could see other women in orange jumpsuits moving through the corridor. Real criminals. Drug dealers, probably. Thieves. Not people like her who had simply made a mistake, who had been provoked beyond reason. Patterson appeared on the other side of the bars, his usually immaculate appearance disheveled. "Claire, we need to talk." "Get me out of here," she said immediately, gripping the bars. "This is ridiculous. I want to post bail right now." "It's not that simple." Patterson's voice was grim. "You assaulted the judge's wife in open court. In front of cameras, Claire. This is all over the news already." Claire felt the first real stab of fear, but she pushed it down. "It wasn't assault. I barely slapped her. She was completely out of line, talking to me like that. She had no right." "She had every right," Patterson interrupted sharply. "She's a private citizen in a public courtroom, and you committed battery against her." "Battery?" Claire laughed, but it sounded hollow even to her own ears. "Come on, Richard. We both know what this really is. That woman baited me. She knew exactly what she was doing, pushing my buttons like that. And her husband, did you see how he set me up? This was planned." Patterson stared at her through the bars. "Claire, listen to yourself. You think a federal judge and his wife conspired to make you slap her in open court?" "I think," Claire said slowly, her voice dropping to a whisper, "that some people have been waiting for an opportunity like this for a very long time, to take down someone like me." Meanwhile, across town, Nia sat in her car in the courthouse parking garage, her hands gripping the steering wheel so tightly her knuckles had gone white. The left side of her face still stung, not from the physical impact that had faded quickly, but from the humiliation that seemed to burn deeper with each passing minute. Her phone had been buzzing non-stop. Missed calls from Marcus, from her sister, from colleagues who had already seen the news footage. She turned the phone face down on the passenger seat and stared at the concrete wall in front of her. "Just go home," she told herself. "Pretend it never happened. Let the legal system handle it." But she couldn't shake the image of Claire Whitman's face in that moment, before the slap, the pure hatred, the complete conviction that Nia was somehow beneath her, unworthy of basic respect. It was a look she'd seen before, though never quite so nakedly expressed. Her phone buzzed again. This time she looked Marcus. "Nia, where are you? Are you okay? I'm so sorry. I should have." "You should have what?" she answered, her voice sharper than she intended. "Predicted that a defendant would assault me in your courtroom. I should have protected you. I should have stopped her before." "Before what, Marcus?" "Before she said what she really thought. Before she showed everyone in that courtroom exactly what she thinks of people like me." There was silence on the other end. "Then where are you? I'm coming to get you." "I'm fine," Nia lied. I just need some time to think." "Nia." She hung up and immediately felt guilty. None of this was Marcus's fault, but she couldn't face him right now, couldn't face the concern in his eyes or the protective anger she knew would be there. She needed to process this alone, to figure out why one moment of violence had shaken her so completely. Her phone rang again. This time it was her sister, Keisha. "Girl, are you crazy?" Keisha's voice exploded through the speaker before Nia could even say hello. "I just saw the news. That white woman put her hands on you." "Keisha." "Nah, don't Keisha me. I'm already in my car. Where is this woman? Because I'm about to—" "Stop," Nia said firmly. "Just stop. It's handled." "Handled?" "Nia, she slapped you. On camera. In front of God and everybody. And you're just gonna what? Turn the other cheek?" The phrase hit Nia like a physical blow. Turn the other cheek. How many times had she heard that growing up? How many times had she been told to be the bigger person, to rise above, to not give people like Claire Whitman the satisfaction of a reaction? "What do you want me to do?" Naya asked, her voice barely above a whisper. "Go down to the jail and slap her back?" "I want you to stop acting like this is normal," Keisha shot back. "I want you to stop pretending that what just happened was okay because she's rich and white and you're supposed to be grateful for your place at the table." "That's not," Naya started, then stopped. Was that what she was doing? Making excuses for Claire's behavior because some part of her had internalized the message that she should be grateful to be tolerated in these spaces. "Look," Keisha continued, her voice softer now, "I get it. You've worked hard to build your life, your reputation. You don't want to be seen as angry or vengeful, but baby, sometimes angry is the right response." After Keisha hung up, Naya sat in the silence of her car, replaying the moment over and over. The shock on Claire's face immediately after the slap had been genuine, as if she herself couldn't believe what she'd done. But what had come before that moment? The entitled assumption that Naya had no right to speak to her, to challenge her, to exist in that space as an equal. Back at the jail, Claire had been moved to a private cell, away from the general population, but the isolation only made things worse. Every noise in the corridor made her jump. Every face that appeared at her door made her heart race. "Mrs. Whitman?" A young public defender stood outside her cell. "I'm here to discuss your bail hearing." "Where's Patterson?" Claire demanded. "Mr. Patterson has recused himself from your case. Something about conflicts of interest and reputation management." The words hit Claire like ice water. Richard Patterson had been her family's lawyer for 15 years. If he was abandoning her now, "The judge's wife," Claire said suddenly. "Has she said anything? Is she pressing charges?" The public defender consulted his notes. "Dr. Thornton Williams hasn't made any public statements. The assault charge is being pursued by the state." "Assault," Claire repeated bitterly. "It was barely a tap. She's probably milking this for all it's worth, playing the victim." The public defender looked at her with something approaching disbelief. "Mrs. Whitman, you do understand that you committed a felony on camera in front of a federal judge. Your best bet right now is to show genuine remorse and hope Dr. Thornton Williams shows mercy." "Mercy?" Claire's voice rose. "I'm the one who needs mercy? She humiliated me in front of everyone, talked to me like I was some common criminal." "You are a criminal," the public defender said quietly. "You embezzled money from children with cancer, and now you've assaulted an innocent woman because she called you out on it." Claire stared at him, feeling the walls of her carefully constructed world crumbling around her. Everyone was against her. Everyone was determined to see her as the villain in this story. But deep down, in a place she wasn't ready to acknowledge, a small voice whispered that maybe, just maybe, they were right. Have you ever seen someone refuse to take responsibility for their actions, even when the evidence is clear? How do you think both women should handle this situation moving forward? Let us know in the comments. The call came at 11:47 p.m., jarring Naya from the first real sleep she'd managed since the courthouse incident 3 days ago. She fumbled for her phone, squinting at the unfamiliar number. "Dr. Thornton Williams? This is Dr. Sarah Chen at City Medical. We have a situation at the county jail. A detainee is experiencing what appears to be a severe panic attack, possibly a psychotic break. The jail's psychiatrist is out of town, and we need someone with your credentials to perform an emergency evaluation." Nia sat up, instantly alert. What are the symptoms? Hyperventilation, dissociation, claims of being poisoned. She's been awake for 3 days straight, refuses to eat, and is now saying people are trying to kill her. The guards are concerned about self-harm. "And you need me specifically because—" There was a pause. "The detainee is Claire Whitman." Nia's blood went cold. I can't. There's a conflict of interest. Dr. Thornton Williams, I know about the courthouse incident, but she's specifically asking for you. She won't let anyone else near her, says you're the only one who understands what's happening to her. Nia closed her eyes, pressing her fingers to her temples. That doesn't make any sense. Maybe not, but she's deteriorating rapidly. If we can't get her stabilized, we'll have to sedate her and put her on a psychiatric hold. Given the media attention around her case, that's going to create its own problems. Marcus stirred beside her. What's wrong? He mumbled. Nia covered the phone. Nothing. Go back to sleep. She walked to the bathroom, closing the door softly. Dr. Chen, I really don't think I'm the right person for this. Look, I'll be honest with you. Word came down from the hospital administration. They want someone unimpeachable handling this. Someone whose credibility can't be questioned. Given your reputation and the fact that you're involved, they think you're the only one who can evaluate her fairly. The only one who can evaluate her fairly. The irony wasn't lost on Nia. I'll be there in 30 minutes. 25 minutes later, the county jail at midnight felt like a tomb. Fluorescent lights hummed overhead as Nia followed Dr. Chen through a maze of security checkpoints, each locked door clanging shut behind them with finality. She's in isolation, Dr. Chen explained, as they walked, for her own protection as much as anything else. The other inmates, let's just say they don't appreciate what she did to you. They paused outside a heavy steel door with a small window. Through it, Nia could see Claire huddled in the corner of a small cell, still wearing her rumpled courthouse clothes. She was rocking slightly, her arms wrapped around her knees. Has she eaten anything? Nia asked. Nothing solid in 3 days. Some water. The guards say she keeps checking the food for poison. Dr. Chen handed Nia a tablet. Her vitals are stable, but her mental state. Nia watched Claire through the window. Even from here she could see the tremor in the woman's hands, the way her eyes darted constantly around the cell. The guard unlocked the door, and Nia stepped inside. Claire's head snapped up, her eyes wild and unfocused. You came, Claire whispered, and the relief in her voice was so raw it made Nia's chest tighten. I knew you'd come. You're the only one who knows? Knows what, Claire? Nia kept her voice calm, professional, as she slowly moved closer. That they're trying to kill me. The food, the water, it's all poisoned. They want to make it look like suicide, but you know, don't you? You know what they're capable of. Nia knelt down carefully, maintaining eye contact. Who is they, Claire? The system. The people who run things. They can't let me talk about what I know. Claire's voice dropped to a whisper. About the money. It wasn't just me. There were others, important people, but I'm the one they chose to sacrifice. Nia felt a chill run down her spine. What others? Claire's eyes focused on Nia's face for the first time. You really don't know, do you? You think this is all about me stealing from sick kids. But that's not what this is about. Not really. Then what is it about? Power, control, making examples. Claire's voice was steadier now, more lucid. I made the mistake of thinking I was protected, that my connections meant something. But the moment I became inconvenient, she gestured around the cell. This is what happens. They destroy you piece by piece. First your reputation, then your freedom, then your sanity. And they make sure everyone watches, so they know what happens when you step out of line. Nia sat back on her heels, studying Claire's face. The paranoid ideation was clear, but there was something else underneath it, a kind of broken awareness that was almost more disturbing than delusion. Claire, when did you last sleep? I can't sleep. Every time I close my eyes, I see that moment in the courtroom. Your face when I... Claire's voice broke. "I keep seeing it over and over. The shock, the hurt. Like I'd slapped a child." The comparison hit Nia unexpectedly hard. "Why did you ask for me specifically?" Claire was quiet for a long moment, staring at her hands. "Because you're the only person who's seen me at my worst and not walked away. Everyone else, my friends, my lawyer, my own husband, they all disappeared the moment this got difficult. But you're here. I'm here because it's my job." "No," Claire said softly. "You're here because you understand what it feels like to be alone in a room full of people who've already decided who you are." The words hung in the air between them. Despite herself, Nia felt a flicker of recognition, a memory of every boardroom where she'd been the only black face, every professional gathering where she'd had to prove herself twice as hard as everyone else. "That doesn't excuse what you did to me." "I know." Claire's voice was barely audible. "I know it doesn't, but I need you to understand. I've never been powerless before. I've never been at anyone's mercy. And when I saw you in that courtroom, so confident, so sure of your place, I hated you for it. I hated that you had something I thought I had, but never really did." Nia frowned. "What do you mean?" "Respect," Claire said simply. "Real respect. Not the kind that comes from money or connections, but the kind you earn. Your husband looks at you like you hung the moon. Those reporters wanted your opinion, not just your reaction. Even in that courtroom, people listened when you spoke. I realized I'd never had that. Not really." Nia felt something shift inside her, a crack in the wall of anger she'd built around this woman. "Claire, I need you to eat something, and I need you to try to sleep. Will you stay? Just until I fall asleep? I know I don't have the right to ask, but—" "I'll stay for a while," Nia said quietly. As Claire finally relaxed enough to lie down on the narrow cot, Nia found herself studying this woman who had humiliated her so publicly. Stripped of her designer clothes and careful makeup, Claire looked smaller, younger, more fragile than Nia had expected. Human? This is dangerous, Nia thought. I'm starting to see her as a person instead of the enemy. But she didn't leave. Instead, she sat in the plastic chair the guard brought in and watched Claire's breathing slowly even out, and wondered when exactly the lines between victim and perpetrator had become so blurred. Outside, she could hear the sounds of the jail settling into its nighttime rhythm, the distant clang of doors, the murmur of voices, the constant hum of surveillance. Two women, trapped together by circumstances neither had chosen, beginning to see each other clearly for the first time. Claire slept fitfully for 3 hours before jerking awake with a gasp. Nia had dozed in her chair, but her eyes opened immediately at the sound. "Sorry," Claire whispered, sitting up slowly. "Nightmare." "About the courtroom?" "No, about my father." Claire ran her hands through her tangled hair. "I haven't thought about him in years, but being in here, it's like I'm 12 years old again." Nia shifted in her chair, not sure if she wanted to hear this, but unable to look away from the raw vulnerability in Claire's voice. "He used to lock me in the closet when I misbehaved," Claire continued, her voice distant. "Said it would teach me discipline. I'd sit in there for hours listening to him tell my mother how disappointed he was in me, how I was weak, how I'd never amount to anything unless I learned to be stronger." The fluorescent light buzzed overhead, casting harsh shadows across Claire's face. "Charles Whitman," she said with bitter laugh. "You probably know the name. Real estate empire, political connections, the works. Everyone thought I was so lucky to be his daughter. And I was, I suppose. Lucky to have every door opened for me, every problem solved with money, every mistake erased." "But," Nia prompted gently, "but nothing I ever did was good enough. I wasn't pretty enough, smart enough, ruthless enough. He'd compare me to other people's children constantly. Look at the Henderson girl, she's on the dean's list. The Morrison boy just made partner at 28. Why can't you be more like them? Claire's hands were shaking again, but this time it wasn't from withdrawal or fear. It was from a pain so old and deep she'd spent 30 years trying to bury it. So I learned to hate them, she whispered. The people he held up as examples. I learned to find reasons why they didn't deserve their success, why they were threats to be eliminated or obstacles to be overcome. It was easier than admitting I wasn't enough. Nia felt her chest tighten. Claire? The day he died, do you know what his last words to me were? Claire looked directly at Nia for the first time since waking up. Try not to embarrass the family name. He was literally dying, and that's what he was worried about. The silence stretched between them until Nia spoke quietly. My father never said anything like that to me. Claire looked up, surprised by the offering. He couldn't, Nia continued. He was shot when I was 15. Wrong place, wrong time. Just walking home from his second job. The words came slowly, as if Nia was excavating them from some deep place she rarely visited. Everyone kept telling my mother how sorry they were, how tragic it was. But you know what the police said? They said maybe he was involved in something. Maybe he was dealing drugs. Maybe he brought it on himself. Claire's face went very still. My father worked 2 jobs to put me through prep school. He cleaned office buildings at night and drove a delivery truck during the day. He was the kindest man I've ever known. Nia's voice cracked slightly. But he was a black man in the wrong neighborhood after dark, so suddenly his death was suspicious instead of tragic. Nia. The funeral was horrible. All these white people from my school showing up, whispering about how sad it was, how they never knew I came from that kind of background. Like poverty was contagious. Like my father's death proved something about who I really was underneath the scholarship and the good grades. Nia stood up and walked to the small window, looking out at the darkness beyond the bars. I remember this one woman, Mrs. Patterson, the headmaster's wife. She cornered my mother at the reception, told her how impressed she was that I was rising above my circumstances. Like my father dying was just another obstacle for me to overcome, instead of the worst thing that had ever happened to our family. Claire's voice was very quiet. Patterson. Richard Patterson is my lawyer. Was my lawyer. Small world, Nia said with a humorless laugh. His mother probably never imagined that the scholarship girl she pitied would end up married to a federal judge. What did you do after he died? I got angry. Really, really angry. Nietzsche turned back to face Claire. For about a year, I hated everyone. Everyone who had more than me. Everyone who got to keep their fathers. Everyone who looked at me like I was a charity case. I wanted to burn it all down. What changed? My mother. Nia's voice softened. She sat me down one day and said, "Baby, you can spend your life hating the people who hurt us, or you can spend it becoming someone they can't ignore." She was right. Anger is exhausting. But excellence? Excellence is revenge. Claire was staring at her with something approaching awe. That's what I saw in the courtroom. That's what I hated about you. You had turned your pain into power, and I had turned mine into poison. Claire. No, let me finish. Claire stood up slowly, moving to face Nia directly. When I saw you that day, so confident, so sure of yourself, it was like looking at everything I could have been if I'd been braver, if I'd been better. And instead of admiring that, instead of learning from it, I tried to tear you down because it was easier than facing my own failures. Nia studied Claire's face, seeing something there she hadn't expected. You're not the same person who slapped me. Yes, I am, Claire said firmly. I'm exactly that person. But maybe I don't have to stay that person. The guard appeared at the door. Dr. Thornton Williams, visiting hours are over. Nia nodded, then looked back at Claire. There's something else you should know. What? Those other people you mentioned, the ones involved in the charity money, I think you might be right about that. Claire's eyes widened. What do you mean? Marcus has been getting pressure to go easy on your sentence. Phone calls from prominent donors, board members. People who think a white woman from a good family shouldn't face real consequences for a mistake. And he's refusing. But the pressure is real, which means either there are people who care about you more than you think, or there are people who need me to stay quiet, Claire finished. I've seen your financial records, Claire. The money didn't just disappear into your personal accounts. Some of it went to shell companies, dummy corporations. Someone taught you how to hide that money. Claire sank back onto the cot, the implications washing over her. Richard Patterson. He set up those accounts. He said it was standard practice. A way to, oh God. Who else knew about the setup? The board, at least some of them. Margot Astor, definitely. Her husband sits on half the charity boards in the city. Claire's voice was getting stronger, more focused. They used me. They knew I was desperate to prove myself after my father died, desperate to show I could handle big responsibilities. So they set me up to take the fall if anyone ever looked too closely at where the money was really going. Nia felt a chill run down her spine. Claire, if that's true, then you're not just a thief. You're a witness. And witnesses, Claire said quietly, tend to have accidents in places like this. As Nia left the jail 20 minutes later, her mind was racing. She'd come here to evaluate a woman she'd seen as her attacker, someone whose prejudice had humiliated her publicly. But she was leaving with something else entirely, the recognition that Claire Whitman might be as much a victim as a perpetrator, and that the real criminals were still walking free. More disturbing than that was the growing certainty that she and Claire were more alike than different. Two women who had learned to navigate a world that didn't want them, who had armored themselves against pain in different ways, and who were now bound together by forces neither of them fully understood. The question was, what were they going to do about it? The next evening, Nia found herself back at the county jail, though she couldn't quite articulate why. Officially, she was conducting a follow-up evaluation. Unofficially, she couldn't stop thinking about Claire's revelation regarding the financial setup. "You came back," Claire said, when the guard let Nia into the cell. She looked better, cleaner, more alert. She'd finally eaten something. "I brought you something." Nia held up a small container. "Homemade soup, chicken and vegetables. I figured jail food probably isn't helping your recovery." Claire stared at the container as if it might be a mirage. "You made me soup." "My mother's recipe. She always said food was medicine for the soul." Nia set it down on the small table. "Don't worry, I made sure it was cleared through the proper channels." "Why?" Claire's voice was barely above a whisper. Nia sat down in the plastic chair, considering the question. "Because I keep thinking about what you said. About being used, and because," she paused, searching for the right words, "because I think I judged you too quickly." Claire opened the container carefully, inhaling the rich scent. "This smells like my grandmother's kitchen." She looked up, surprised. "I haven't thought about her in years. She was the only person in my family who never made me feel like I wasn't enough." "What was she like?" "Soft, kind. She used to sneak me cookies when my father put me on one of his disciplined diets." Claire took a tentative sip of the soup and closed her eyes. "She died when I was 16. After that, there was no one left who saw anything good in me." "That's not true, isn't it?" Claire set down the spoon and looked directly at Nia. "Name one person in my life who doesn't have something to gain from knowing me. One person who likes me for who I am instead of what I can do for them." Nia was quiet for a moment. "What about your husband?" Claire laughed. But there was no humor in it. David married Claire Whitman, heir to a fortune and a name. He's never even tried to know who I am underneath all that. When this scandal broke, you know what he said. How could you be so careless? Not how can I help you, or what really happened. Just disappointment that I'd been caught. I'm sorry. Don't be. I'm finally seeing my life clearly for the first time. Claire took another sip of soup. This is really good. How did you learn to cook? My mother. After my father died, we couldn't afford to eat out anymore, so she taught me, said a woman who could feed people, would never be powerless. Naya smiled at the memory. We'd spend Sunday afternoons in the kitchen, making enough food for the week. She'd tell me stories about her grandmother, who cooked for a wealthy family in Alabama. Was she bitter? About having to work for people who probably treated her badly? Sometimes, but she was also proud, she said. Knowing how to make something beautiful out of simple ingredients was its own kind of power. Nia watched Claire eat. She would have liked you, I think. Claire nearly choked on her soup. Liked me? The woman who assaulted her daughter? The woman who's finally being honest about her pain. Nia leaned forward. My mother always said, hurt people, but she also said healing people, heal people. Claire set down the spoon and wiped her eyes. I don't know how to heal. I don't even know who I am without the money and the name and the pretending. Maybe that's where you start, with not knowing. They sat in comfortable silence for a moment, the weight of shared vulnerability settling between them like a bridge. Nia, Claire said suddenly, I need to tell you something else about the charity money. Something I remembered after you left yesterday. What? There was a meeting, about 6 months before the investigation started. Patterson called it an emergency board session, said there had been some irregularities in the books, and they needed someone to take responsibility, to clean it up quietly. Nia felt her pulse quicken. And I volunteered. Like an idiot. I actually volunteered. I thought it would be my chance to prove myself, to show I could handle a crisis. Claire's voice was bitter. They were so grateful, so relieved that someone was willing to step up. They even gave me specific instructions on how to move the money, which accounts to use. Do you have any of this in writing? Some of it. Text messages, emails. I kept everything because I wanted to document how well I was handling the situation. Claire looked at Nia with dawning realization. They set me up perfectly, didn't they? Made me think I was the hero while actually making me the scapegoat. Claire, those records could change everything. They could prove you were manipulated, that you weren't the mastermind. But they're at home, in my safe. Claire's face fell. And David has probably destroyed everything by now to protect himself. Maybe not. Maybe he doesn't know what you kept. Even if the records still exist, how would we get them? I'm in jail, and you, Claire trailed off, looking at Nia with something approaching hope. You think there's actually a way out of this? I think there's a way to make sure the right people face consequences. Nia's voice was steady, determined. But it's going to require you to be braver than you've ever been. To stand up not just for yourself, but for all the people who were really hurt by this. Claire was quiet for a long moment, then nodded slowly. The children. The ones whose treatment got delayed because of the missing money. I have a patient, Nia said quietly. Emma Rodriguez. She's 8 years old, fighting leukemia. Her family had to postpone her treatment for 3 weeks because the funding disappeared. 3 weeks, Claire, for an 8-year-old with cancer. Claire closed her eyes, pain washing over her face. Is she? Will she be okay? She's responding well now, but those 3 weeks could have cost her everything. I need to see her, Claire said suddenly. I need to look her in the eyes and apologize. That's not possible. Not right now. Then I need to do something else. Something that matters. Claire looked at Nia with a fierce determination that hadn't been there before. Help me figure out how to get those records. Help me bring down the people who used me. Why? What's changed? Claire gestured to the small space around them, to the container of soup, to the woman who had shown her unexpected kindness. A week ago, I thought I was untouchable. I thought I was better than everyone else because I had money and connections. But sitting here talking to you, eating soup made by someone who has every reason to hate me, I'm learning what it feels like to be human. And it turns out being human is terrifying and wonderful and completely different from anything I've ever experienced. Claire's voice was stronger now, more certain. For the first time in my life, I want to be someone worthy of kindness. Someone who deserves a second chance. Nia felt something shift in her chest, a warmth that had nothing to do with the soup or the jail's overheated air. Looking at Claire now, really looking at her, she saw not the entitled woman who had humiliated her, but someone who was finally becoming real. "Okay," Nia said simply. "Let's figure this out together." The call came at 6 a.m., 3 days after Nia's soup visit. Marcus's voice was tight with controlled anger. "Nia, we need to talk, now." She found him in his study, still in his robe, surrounded by newspapers and printouts from news websites. The headlines made her stomach drop. Judge's wife befriends attacker, Stockholm Syndrome or corruption, federal judge's family under investigation. "Marcus, don't." His voice was sharper than she'd ever heard it. "Just don't. Tell me this isn't what it looks like." Nia picked up one of the newspapers, seeing a grainy photo of her entering the county jail. The caption read, "Dr. Nia Thornton Williams makes her third visit to see the woman who assaulted her." Someone's been watching me? Someone's been watching both of us. The Judicial Ethics Committee got an anonymous tip that we're conspiring with a defendant to influence her case. Marcus stood up, pacing behind his desk. "They want to interview you. They want to interview me. They're talking about recusal, about misconduct, about ending my career." That's ridiculous. I was conducting psychological evaluations. With soup, Marcus held up a photo that made Nia's blood run cold. It showed her carrying the container into the jail, clearly violating protocol. Professional evaluations don't involve homemade meals, Nia. She was refusing to eat. She was deteriorating. She was manipulating you. Marcus's voice exploded through the room. "Can't you see that? This woman assaulted you, humiliated you publicly, and now she's got you believing she's some kind of victim? She is a victim. There are other people involved, people who set her up. According to the woman who has every reason to lie, to deflect, to make herself look sympathetic." Marcus stopped pacing and looked directly at her. "Nia, they found the records." Her heart stopped. "What records?" "The ones Claire claimed would prove her innocence. David Whitman turned them over to the FBI yesterday." Marcus's voice was deadly quiet. "They don't prove she was set up. They prove the opposite." He handed her a manila folder. Inside were photocopies of emails, bank statements, and handwritten notes, all in Claire's handwriting, all detailing how to siphon money from the charity accounts without detection. "Look at the dates," Marcus said. Nia's hands trembled as she read. The earliest document was dated almost 2 years ago, long before the supposed emergency board meeting Claire had described. "She's been planning this for years," Marcus continued. "The shell companies, the dummy accounts, the timing of the transfers to avoid audits, it's all here in her own writing." Nia stared at the papers, feeling like the ground was disappearing beneath her feet. But she seemed so genuine. "She's a sociopath, Nia. A master manipulator who saw an opportunity to use your compassion against you." Marcus's voice softened slightly. "Baby, I know you want to see the good in people. It's one of the things I love about you. But this woman played you. No, the word came out as a whisper. No, she wouldn't. The pain was real. Her tears were real. Were they? Or did she just know exactly what to say to make you feel sorry for her? Nia thought about Claire's stories. The father who locked her in closets, the grandmother who died, the husband who didn't truly know her. Had any of it been true, or had Claire been watching, calculating, figuring out exactly what would make Dr. Nia Thornton Williams open her heart to her attacker? There's more, Marcus said gently. The FBI found evidence that she's been embezzling from multiple charities over the past 5 years. The Children's Cancer Fund was just the latest. She's stolen over $2 million from organizations that help the most vulnerable people in our city. $2 million. Not the desperate act of a manipulated woman, but the calculated crimes of a predator who had learned to hide behind charity work and social status. Nia's phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. The soup was delicious. Thank you for everything. She stared at the message, and suddenly every moment of their conversations took on a different cast. Claire asking specifically for her. Claire's perfectly timed breakdown. Claire's carefully crafted sob story about being set up. Even the request for soup, had Claire known that Nia would see it as a gesture of kindness rather than an inappropriate boundary violation. She played me, Nia said slowly, the words tasting bitter in her mouth. She played me perfectly. Nia. She knew exactly what to say. She researched me, probably. Found out about my father, about growing up poor, about all the ways I'd been underestimated. And then she crafted this whole narrative about being a victim of powerful men because she knew I'd relate to it. The phone rang. Marcus answered it, his face growing grimmer by the second. That was the hospital administrator, he said when he hung up. The ethics committee is requesting your immediate suspension pending their investigation. They want to know why you violated every professional boundary to befriend a patient who was never officially your patient. She asked for me specifically. I thought, you thought with your heart instead of your head, and now our entire life is falling apart because of it. Marcus sat down heavily in his chair. The committee wants to interview you tomorrow. They have evidence of inappropriate contact, unauthorized treatment, potential conspiracy to obstruct justice. Conspiracy. Claire's lawyer is claiming that your visits were attempts to coach her testimony to help her craft a defense strategy. He's saying the whole thing was orchestrated, her requesting you, your decision to treat her, the development of your relationship. The word hung between them like an accusation. 23 years, Marcus said quietly. 23 years I've been building my reputation, my career, and it could all be over because my wife fell for a con artist's sob story. Nia felt tears burning her eyes. Marcus, I'm sorry. I never meant. I know you didn't mean for this to happen, but that doesn't change the fact that it did. He looked at her with something that might have been pity. You need to distance yourself from her. Completely. No more visits, no more contact, no more thinking about her well-being. Because if you don't, we're both going to lose everything. And if she really is being set up by other people, then that's for her lawyer to prove, not for you to investigate. Marcus's voice was final. Nia, I need you to choose, her or us. Because right now, you can't have both. As Nia walked out of Marcus's study, her phone buzzed again. Another text from Claire. I heard about the committee. I'm so sorry. This is all my fault. But please don't abandon me. You're the only person who's ever really seen me. Nia stared at the message for a long moment, then deleted it without responding. Because whether Claire was a master manipulator or a broken woman reaching out for help, the result was the same. Trusting her had cost Nia everything that mattered. In her car, sitting in her own driveway, Nia finally allowed herself to cry for her naivety, for her marriage, for her career, and for the possibility that the connection she'd felt with Claire had been nothing more than an elaborate lie designed to destroy her life. Nia sat in her car for 45 minutes, staring at her phone. Claire's messages kept coming, each one more desperate than the last. "Please don't believe what they're telling you." The records David turned over. "They're not the real ones. I lied about some things, but not about the important things. I know you have no reason to trust me, but I'm begging you to listen." Finally, Nia turned off the phone and went inside. She needed silence to think, space to breathe, time to figure out how everything had gone so wrong so quickly. But the house felt different now, contaminated by doubt and the lingering scent of failure. She walked through rooms that had once felt like home, seeing them through the eyes of the ethics committee, the media, the colleagues who would soon be whispering about her spectacular fall from grace. In her study, she pulled out the files she'd brought home from the hospital, patient records, research notes, the careful documentation of a career built on helping people heal. Would any of it matter now? Would anyone remember the lives she'd saved, the families she'd helped put back together, the years of service to her community? Or would she only be remembered as the judge's wife who fell for a con artist's lies? Her phone rang. "Keisha. Girl, what the hell is happening? I just saw the news about you and that white woman." "I made a mistake," Nia said simply. "A mistake? Nia? They're saying you helped her plan some kind of defense strategy, that you're under investigation for corruption." "I know what they're saying. But it's not true, right? Tell me you didn't actually—" "I don't know what's true anymore." Nia's voice broke slightly. "I thought I was helping someone who needed help, but maybe I was just being naive. Maybe I wanted so badly to prove I could see past race and class that I ignored obvious red flags." Keisha was quiet for a moment. "Or maybe you did exactly what a good person would do in that situation, and now people are trying to punish you for it." "What do you mean?" "I mean, think about who benefits from destroying your reputation. Think about who wants to see Judge Williams taken down a peg. And think about who might want the focus off the real criminals in this charity scandal." Nia felt something click in her mind. "You think this is intentional? The leaked photos? The ethics investigation? I think powerful people don't like it when judges can't be bought or intimidated, and I think the easiest way to control a man is to threaten what he loves most." After Keisha hung up, Nia sat in the growing darkness of her study, pieces of a larger puzzle beginning to arrange themselves in her mind. The anonymous tip to the ethics committee. The perfectly timed leak of the photos. David Whitman's sudden cooperation with the FBI, the media narrative that painted her as either a victim of Stockholm Syndrome or a willing conspirator. Someone wanted her discredited. Someone wanted Marcus compromised. And someone wanted Claire's claims about being set up to disappear entirely. Meanwhile, in the county jail, Claire stared at the small television in the common area, watching her life dissected on the evening news. The other inmates had stopped bothering her since the story broke. Apparently, having your crimes detailed on national television made you interesting rather than threatening. Federal sources confirm that the evidence against Claire Whitman is overwhelming, the reporter was saying. The handwritten documents provided by her husband show a pattern of calculated theft spanning multiple years. The handwritten documents provided by her husband. Claire's blood went cold. Those weren't the documents from her safe. The ones David had access to were different, personal notes she'd made while trying to understand the financial instruments Patterson had set up for her. Notes where she'd tried to figure out what she was actually signing, what she was actually agreeing to do. But taken out of context, those notes would look like evidence of criminal planning rather than evidence of confusion and manipulation. Her phone privileges had been revoked after the ethics investigation began, but she managed to convince a sympathetic guard to let her make one call. Patterson Law Offices. I need to speak to Richard Patterson. It's Claire Whitman. I'm sorry, Miss Whitman, but Mr. Patterson is no longer representing you. All communication should go through your public defender. Just tell him I know about the Morrison account. There was a pause, then the click of a transfer. Claire, Patterson's voice was carefully neutral. You shouldn't be calling here. The Morrison account, Richard, the one you never told me about. The one that's been funneling money for 3 years before I ever got involved. Silence. I found the records, Richard. The real records. Hidden in a place David doesn't know about. Claire was lying, but her voice was steady. And I'm going to turn them over to the FBI unless you tell me the truth about what's really happening. Claire, you're in no position to make threats. I'm in the perfect position. I have nothing left to lose. But you do. Your law practice, your reputation, your freedom. Claire took a breath. Dr. Thornton Williams is being destroyed because she showed me kindness. An innocent woman is going to lose everything because I dragged her into this. So I'm going to ask you one more time, what's really going on? Patterson was quiet for so long. Claire thought he'd hung up. Then, meet me tomorrow. Visitor hours. Come alone. I can't. My visitor privileges have been suspended. They'll be reinstated. For 1 hour, don't waste it. The line went dead, and Claire realized that in threatening Patterson, she might have just signed her own death warrant. But for the first time since this nightmare began, she also felt something else, the possibility of redemption. Back at the Thornton Williams house, Nia found Marcus in the kitchen, making dinner with mechanical precision. They moved around each other like strangers, 23 years of marriage reduced to careful politeness and avoided eye contact. I've been thinking, she said finally. About? About who really benefits if we both go down. About who's been pulling strings behind the scenes. She sat down at the kitchen table. Marcus, what if this whole thing, the investigation, the leaked photos, the media attention, what if it's designed to keep us from looking at the real crime? Marcus set down his knife and turned to face her. You think we're being set up? I think Claire was telling the truth about some things, even if she lied about others. And I think someone very powerful wants to make sure we never figure out which is which. Marcus was quiet for a long moment. Then, what are you asking me to do? I'm asking you to trust me. One more time, I'm asking you to help me find out who's really behind this. And if you're wrong? If she really is just a master manipulator who's now manipulating both of us. Nia looked at her husband, the man who had stood by her through medical school, through the early years of building her practice, through every challenge they'd faced together. Then we go down fighting for what we believe in instead of running away from what we fear. Marcus studied her face for a long moment, then nodded slowly. What do you need me to do? The visitation room at the county jail felt different this time. Claire sat across from Patterson, watching him fidget with his expensive briefcase, and realized she was no longer afraid of him. You look terrible, she said simply. Patterson's usual polished demeanor had cracked. His tie was crooked, his hair disheveled, and there were dark circles under his eyes. Claire, what you said on the phone, the Morrison account, how did you find out about that? Does it matter? What matters is that I know, and I know you didn't create it for me. Claire leaned forward. How long, Richard? How long have you and the others been using charity organizations as your personal money laundering operation? Patterson's hands shook as he opened his briefcase. It started small, just moving some funds around to help clients avoid taxes. Nothing illegal, technically, just creative accounting. But it grew. It grew. He pulled out a thick folder. When your father died and you inherited his seat on all those boards, you were perfect. Wealthy enough that no one would suspect you needed to steal, naive enough that you'd sign whatever we put in front of you, and desperate enough for approval that you'd do anything to prove yourself worthy of the family name. Claire felt a familiar stab of pain, but this time it was cleaner somehow. So you used my daddy issues against me. We gave you what you wanted. Recognition, responsibility, the feeling that you were finally living up to your potential. Patterson's voice was gaining strength, as if confessing was a relief. All you had to do was sign some papers, authorize some transfers. We told you it was sophisticated financial planning. And when the investigation started, we needed a scapegoat. Someone whose fall would be dramatic enough to satisfy the prosecutors, wealthy enough that people would believe they'd acted out of greed rather than necessity. Someone expendable. Patterson nodded miserably. We never thought you'd figure it out. We certainly never thought you'd get Dr. Thornton Williams involved. Claire felt a surge of protective anger. So you decided to destroy her too? Not me, the others. When they realized she was actually listening to you, actually believing you might be innocent, they panicked. Started pulling strings to discredit her, to make sure no one would take anything she said seriously. Who are the others, Richard? Patterson hesitated, then pulled out a second folder. Everyone who matters in this city. Board members, politicians, business leaders, people who've been using charity money to fund their real investments for years. The Children's Cancer Fund was just one source among dozens. Claire stared at the documents, names she recognized from society pages, from political fundraisers, from the charity galas where she'd felt so proud to belong. All of them. Not all. But enough. Enough to control the narrative, to protect themselves by sacrificing you and anyone who tried to help you. Claire thought about Nia, about Marcus, about their lives being torn apart because she'd finally found someone who saw her as human rather than useful. What happens now? Now, Patterson looked at her with something approaching respect. Now you have a choice. Take the fall quietly, serve your time, and when you get out, there will be a very comfortable settlement waiting for you. Or you fight back, and probably lose everything, including your life. Claire was quiet for a long moment, then smiled, a real smile, free of artifice or calculation. Richard, I already lost everything. My reputation, my marriage, my freedom. The only thing I have left is the chance to do the right thing. She stood up. Give me the files. All of them. 3 days later, the federal courthouse was packed with reporters, victims' families, and curious onlookers as Claire Whitman walked into courtroom 3B for the second time in 2 weeks. But this time, she wasn't the defendant. This time, she was the star witness. Nia sat in the gallery beside Marcus, watching Claire take the witness stand. Gone was the entitled, defensive woman who had slapped her. In her place was someone Nia recognized, someone who had finally learned to tell the truth about her pain instead of using it as a weapon. Miss Whitman, the prosecutor began. You've provided evidence of a conspiracy involving multiple individuals and organizations. Can you tell the court how you became involved? Claire's voice was steady, clear. I was recruited because I was vulnerable. I'd spent my whole life trying to prove I was worthy of my father's name, and these people used that desperation against me. She detailed the conspiracy methodically, the fake accounts, the shell corporations, the careful manipulation that had made her complicit in crimes she'd barely understood. With each revelation, Nia saw more people in the gallery shifting uncomfortably, recognizing names, realizing the scope of what had been hidden. Miss Whitman, the prosecutor continued, what made you decide to cooperate with this investigation? Claire looked directly at Nia. Someone showed me kindness when I didn't deserve it. Someone saw past my worst moment to the person I could become. and I realized that person deserved better than to be destroyed for my mistakes. The echo was subtle but unmistakable, the same courtroom, the same positions, but this time truth instead of hatred, courage instead of cowardice. After the hearing, Nia found Claire in the courthouse hallway, surrounded by FBI agents, but looking more at peace than she had since this all began. "Thank you," Nia said simply. "Thank you," Claire replied, "for seeing me when I couldn't see myself. What happens now? Prison, probably. But not for 20 years, and not for crimes I didn't actually commit." Claire smiled, "And when I get out, I'm going to spend whatever time I have left trying to earn the kindness you showed me." Nia reached out and took Claire's hand. A gesture that would have been unimaginable 2 weeks ago. "You already have." 6 months later, the children's wing of City General Hospital had a new garden funded by the recovered money from the charity scandal. Nia walked through it with Emma Rodriguez, the 8-year-old leukemia patient whose treatment had been delayed by the missing funds. "Dr. Nia," Emma said, stopping by a bench with a small plaque. "Who's Claire Whitman?" Nia read the inscription. "In honor of the children we failed and the hope that we can do better. Claire Whitman." "She's someone who made some very bad choices," Nia said carefully, "but she's also someone who found the courage to make them right." Her phone buzzed with a text from the federal prison where Claire was serving her sentence. "Started my bachelor's degree program. Psychology, like you suggested. Maybe I can help other people who are lost like I was. Thank you for believing I could change." Nia smiled and typed back, "Proud of you. See you at visiting hours next week." Because sometimes redemption wasn't about erasing the harm you'd caused, it was about spending the rest of your life trying to heal it. And sometimes the people who hurt you the most were the ones who needed your forgiveness the most. In the garden, children played and laughed, their treatments funded, their futures secured, and 2 women who had found each other in the darkest moment of their lives continued to choose healing over hatred, connection over revenge, love over fear. What do you think about second chances? Have you ever had to forgive someone who deeply hurt you, or been forgiven when you didn't deserve it? Share your story of redemption in the comments below.
This story explores how prejudice and pain can divide us, but also how courage and compassion can heal even the deepest wounds. Sometimes our greatest enemies become our most unexpected allies, and sometimes love truly does find us in the last place we think to look. If you enjoyed this story, you will surely love the next one. It's as crazier and more intriguing as you can ever imagine. So do check it out. Click on the image showing on your screen right now to watch the next one. Thank you for watching this story to the end.